Today I'm very excited to have Jana here. She is the Northern California sales manager for Continuum, and she was kind enough to brought 2 of their new releases for us to taste. I've always really loved their wine, and I love kind of the mission. The winery itself is absolutely beautiful. I've always recommend people to go visit whenever they want to go to Napa Valley for something that's a little more exclusive and not just like a huge tourist trap. But either way, let's see what's in the bottle. So thank you so much for coming, Jana.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I am super excited. I think most people are very familiar with the Continuum because, I mean, it's a lovely wine, and the people who are not familiar with, I hope they will be by the end of this video. But the Sentium, I am a little unfamiliar with. So can
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sentium is a product from the 4th generation of the Mondavi family. So it would be Robert's grandchildren.
Okay.
And together they came, they were always asking Tim, their dad and uncle, you know, we should have a white wine. We should make a white wine to be a part of the Continuum family.
Okay.
And Tim's focus has always been to have, you know, one red wine to compete in the world stage, which is Continuum.
Wow.
And finally, after a few years of being on Continuum, almost 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, actually 20 years, because 2005 was their first vintage.
Wow. Felt like yesterday.
I know. So Tim finally said, okay, let's do it. So the first vintage was actually 2021, and only 500 cases were produced of that. But the his daughter, who's also the artist behind the 2 labels,
Oh yeah, I love the label.
Kiara, she went to seek out like-minded family farmers that have been farming in California for generations, and was geared or guided towards Mendocino. So she found a couple of families that have been always farming organic and have old vine Sauvignon Blanc.
Wow.
So the parcels that they sourced from were planted in the 1940s and 1960s.
No way, I was gonna ask, because there's no legal regulation when it comes to old vine. So a lot of people like to slap the word old vine on their label just to make it sound like it's special. That's why I was gonna grill you next. I was like, how old? We talk old vine.
Right? Yeah. Right, so pretty old, older than me, older than you.
I didn't even know there's still Sauvignon Blanc vines from the 1940s. Like, holy crap. Like,
isn't that cool?
Oh, wow.
And you know, who else but a Mondavi heir to like pay homage to, you know, Fumé Blanc and old vines, because, you know, Robert coined the term, and then Tim saved these old Sauvignon Blanc vines that were on Tokalama vineyard, what was known as the I block.
Right.
You know, when he started taking over as the vineyard manager for Robert Mondavi Winery, the other vineyard managers kind of wanted to tear out these old vines because they weren't producing a lot of fruit, but he saved those old vines to make a reserve Sauvignon Blanc. And so this is now the 3rd vintage, and it is now, you know, last year we only released 2 restaurants. But this year, 2023 vintage, we have a little more wine, so we're we have now the big retail on premise. Everybody gets it if they want some.
Okay, I am excited to try the wine. How many cases are we?
So we're at about 2,000 cases.
Wow.
So not a huge production. And it's 99% Sauvignon Blanc with the rest is Semillon.
Okay, nice.
It gets fermented in small batches, and it's in thirds: stainless steel, concrete, and used oak.
Interesting.
And concrete cubes.
That's why I was like, it's really hard to place like the style, because it's not your New Zealand style Sauvignon Blanc, but it's not, you know, all like it's not all fully oak, so it's not the super Bordeaux style either. It's a kind of a fun balance, I think.
And I think it's 9 to 10 months dental batonnage.
Wow, the acidity.
Great acidity.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I can't talk for a couple minutes because I was like, that's impressive. That's awesome. Very exciting. Now we're gonna go to the meat and potato.
The meat and potatoes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Continuum itself.
So this is the 2022 vintage, which was a vintage of extremes on, you know, in terms of weather.
Okay.
You know, during the growing season, we had, of course, abundant sunlight and pretty even, long growing days with consistent mild temperatures. but before that we had hail, sleet,
wow,
over a foot of snow on Pritchard Hill,
wow.
over a foot of snow, and then when it came time to pick, we had that huge heat wave.
Oh wow.
Where it was very, very hot. But I think that this vintage is a vintage of resilience, and I think it'll show how the hillside vineyards in the volcanic rock and our farming practices are going to be sustainable with climate change.
It has been a minute since I had a chance to taste the new releases with you because I was a little busy the last couple of years. But this, I mean, I felt like it's even more expressive and intense this year. I don't know if it just, my mind is a little weird, but really the intensities of it is quite nice. Really focused dark fruit as well. I really like that. I personally never like California Cabernets that's like really oak forward. I like California Cabernet that's very expressive and big and bold because I think that's what's sexy about us. And I've always liked Continuum because I felt like you guys always write that really well. Because I think a lot of the time for Cabernet Sauvignon it's so easy to just like put so much oak on it that most people will be like, oh, it tastes great because they smell the vanilla and all that stuff. But I feel like you guys are always very good at being able to balance kind of your oak usage with how intense the fruit is. So it's still, I feel like, driven by the actual structure and the fruit forwardness. I always really enjoy your wine.
Yes, it's always about balancing the mountain tannins with the oak tannins and making sure they're all integrated and in play. How long does the blending process take?
Yeah.
I got to participate in some of the blending of this, which is really, really cool. And each vintage, I think, has its own personality, and each vintage, some vintages take a long time, and some come together right away. Initial blending for like the base blend, probably 2 or 3 sessions. Okay. And then after the initial base blend integrates and goes back into a tank for a little while to kind of meld and do its thing, then they come back to it, you know, a month later or 2 months later, and then they go take the base blend again, and then they come in and they tweak it, and you know, and we start off with the base blend, but then there's 30 other wines that are all individual barrel samples that Tim will taste through again, each individually. Wow. And then after doing that, they'll come and kind of tinker with things, and he'll say, can you put some of, you know, block R or block Y or whatever, or C, and then put it, you know, to this base blend, and then he's like, and then try this one, like, so then there'll be another 3 blends. Wow. That they'll taste to see what happens. Right. And everybody will discuss and kind of like give their opinion on whether or not they think it works, what it did to the wine, did it shorten the tannins, lengthen the tannins, did it make it too ripe, underripe, you know, what flavors it gave to the wine, and then be like, okay, so that blends out. This one is a possibility, and then, you know, so like the one that kind of became a possibility will become like the base, and not really the base, but like another possibility, and then they'll tinker again with and the mathematicians in the vineyard, I mean, why they're amazing, because then he goes to the barrel, and then he'll, like, you know, pull from the fief and get this much from there, this much from there, this much, and then reblend. Wow. Yeah, so it's a couple months. That's you can tell the care that is being put in this bottle every single vintage. I really thought, like, it's such an elegant and well put together wine, in my opinion. But thank you. When it comes to wine at this price point, my clients' #1 question is always, when should I drink it? How long should I age it? How long should I sell it for? So I kind of want an official answer from you. Like, what are the winemakers and recommendation on how long you should? Well, you know, in my opinion, and one of my first mentors told me, wine is meant to be drunk. I agree, Peter Neptune, wine is meant to be drunk. And I 100% agree. I think this vintage is ready to drink now, but it will also age. Nice, okay. I mean, because it's so, to me, it's so expressive right out of the glass. It really is. And if you want to enjoy it at home, you know, open it up when you start cooking.
Yeah,
start off with Sentium.
Some oysters.
And then some oysters. And then, you know, move on throughout the evening and it'll evolve and change and every sip will be a different sip.
That's very
especially
true.
when you have a meal.
I do agree. On the nose, it's expressive and it smells ready. Like it's very well integrated. On the palate, I think it needs a little more time, either decanting or if you're patient enough to let it like age in the cellar in the bottle, because the structure is there. Like you either need a really big, juicy, fatty piece of meat, or you need to decant it. And there's a lot of tobacco leaf on the back end now. Now it opens up a little bit, which I also really enjoy.
Yeah, I love those Bordeaux aromas.
Correct. It's not just like big ripe fruit. There's like a nice balance, and I think that's what happens when you do mountain fruits, and you know you got volcanic soil, so it's not just flabby and fat and ripe. I guess. Oh my god, that is so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure.
I love it. I will see if I can get some allocation this year to share with my clients.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tasting as much as we did. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like, share, and follow for more content just like this. Until next time, cheers.